Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. New week, new theme. We got bass week going now. I'm pretty sure we've had a guitar week at one point. We've definitely had drum cam week. We've had a couple of vocal weeks. It feels good to finally get some spotlight on the bass. We're going to start off this week with UneXpect, which we've had on the channel a couple of times in the past, and I went and rechecked out, what's this song called? Desert Urbania? Yeah. I don't remember what specifically drew me to that one, other than maybe it was just the most recent one we checked out. I watched a live video of it, though, and this bassist has like an H string. The neck is just redonkulous, and I don't remember that about the band. I'm sure people told me about it. But this was so long. When did we do this? Oh, I say so long ago. It was only like 14 months ago. It was early last year. Anyways, let's stop with the preamble. We're already past the 1 minute mark on this video. Let's just dive in and see what UneXpect is bringing with the track Words. Starts off with the bass. Beautiful. Yeah, I think everything's in 3, but they play around with polyrhythmic ideas so often. Yeah, so I definitely feel this in 4, but they're using groupings of 3 that really throw off the accent phrasing to it all. I love how the bass almost acts as a metronome throughout this, being the heartbeat of the song. This is a really popular section for the song so far. Whoa. The bass pulling on that 8th note idea. Yeah, loving what the keyboard's doing right here. Yeah, more metric modulation. Dissonance. tension and using that to pave the way for something a bit more harmonious. I love how the violin is contrasting almost in a canon sense with what the guitar is doing. Bass walking it down there. Yeah, we're definitely in a compound meter right here. I love this tom run. I wish this violin melody would go somewhere though. So I said I wish that this violin melody would go somewhere, and I honestly thought they were removing it during that outro, but instead we faded out a lot of other things and then faded the violin part back in. And I think that only goes to show just how cyclical and directionless it was. When we get to the end of it and it feels like we're going to resolve to something, we move to the leading tone and then we just begin on the leading tone and start over. And so there is no moment of resolution in that final line. It continuously points towards it. We just never get there. And it makes it a bit frustrating for me. But I mean, with UneXpect, frustration's kind of the name of the game. They teeter on the edge of tension frequently, so often, without resolution. I might as well just expect it from them. Pun intended. So, this is bass week. I suppose we should pay a little bit of extra attention to the bass. They were going to get brought up anyways because the bass is ridiculous here. Like I had mentioned earlier, the bass has like an 8-string bass or something. It is just a massive thing. I look at it, I'm just like, I don't have small hands. And I'm still like, could I manipulate the strings around this neck? It is so wide. There's so many strings on it. And the dude just has complete mastery over this instrument. So many different techniques. Just a phenomenal musicianship to it. Tons of chops on all sorts of different techniques as well. Just phenomenal bass player, right? From the little bit I've heard, I know he's a phenomenal bass player, which I wish I didn't have to say that because that means that I haven't listened to a lot of UneXpect. And at the end of both of my previous videos, I'm sure I said I need to check these guys out. And I'm fairly sure they're on my list, but I got to double check later and make sure. I got to get around to this group sooner rather than later. So, the bass, where I was supposed to be going with. The bass is clear and present in almost every section here. The bass is certainly a danger to groove. If you don't want to groove, you should probably not check this out because the bass is phenomenal at it. We kick off the song with the bass and the violin, if I remember correctly. The bass drops immediately into this phenomenal. I keep saying phenomenal. It's so good though. Just this really great bass line. It's groovy. It has a nice melodic hook to it. It pulls you along. The tone is warm and welcoming. It's got a nice round tone to it as well. It's it's everything a bass tone should be, at least for this type of music. I mean, there's definitely some heavier metals that I think just having sort of a distorted, punchy bass tone works really well for, but here it's just this nice, warm, round tone. Very inviting, very soothing. After we get out of this section, we hear a flurry of different types of bass ideas, sometimes aligning themselves with the guitars, like when they shift away from the quarter and eighth notes to a 16th note, constant just driving attack that the guitars are doing. You just line up right with that and move into that really fast pattern. We have a walking bass line somewhere in the track. I think that was like 4 or 5 minutes in. It was definitely in the latter half. Just moved to a pretty traditional. A walking bass line is something in jazz where the chordal ideas are outlined by a series of single notes. And the way that you move between these notes is different for every situation. You can certainly just keep rising up and even arpeggiate if you want, root 3-5 octave, 5-3 root. But usually you can dance around and kind of go up some and then come back down and go up to a top, come back down a little bit and do these stepwise ideas. There's a lot of different ways to walk a bass line, but the idea is to flesh out your chord through a series of single notes. And so when your chord changes, which could be once every bar, once every other bar, those are pretty consistently reliable movements for a chord in a progression, your notes are going to shift and the way that you move through the chord is going to shift. And that's what we had here, a rather linear idea of rigid movement where each note is the same length as the one before it and the one after it, moving through these chordal structures. And then we also have these moments where the bass kind of falls into the background a little bit and just fills out the low end. This doesn't happen as often, but I think it's interesting to point out that the bassist or whoever composes for the bassist, there could be a single composer for the group or everybody writes their own, I don't know. They understand that instruments don't always have to be in the spotlight. And they understand that in certain sections, certain instruments, timbres, and ideas are going to be more important than others. And in those sections, the bass doesn't need to be moving or linear or doing something that's attention grabbing. They just need to fill in the low end. There's so much going on above that there's not a lot of room for them. But without the bass, you have something that feels like it's lacking the bass end, the lower pitch notes. So the bass literally just plays a whole note down there, moves with each bar or whatever, and doesn't do anything intricate, doesn't do anything attention grabbing, just fills in the space so it doesn't feel empty. And I absolutely love that. It shows a maturity in composition, especially when your bassist is as sick as they are. And you're like, dang, I just want to show them off all the time, but the music doesn't call for it, and the composer says, okay, we'll just show them off in a couple seconds. And so there's just a lot of versatility in our bassist here that I wanted to point out. And, I got to give some props to the producer as well. This is not from an official video or an official channel. I looked and there weren't any, not on YouTube. Dang. I completely forgot to check out Bandcamp. UneXpect is on Bandcamp. This song, well, that sucks. I was going to talk about how this wasn't an official video of theirs. And it was uploaded 11 years ago, and between YouTube's older compression formats and the fact that it probably wasn't a uh, a lossless audio version. There's probably some compression on it already. There might have been an MP3 that was uploaded. Might not even have been a 320 MP3. Could have been something of lower quality. You know, the production could be not great here, and there certainly are elements in our sections in here. I was like, oh, I wish there was a bit more clarity, and I don't know if I should chalk that up to the band, since this album is a bit older. It's 2010, I think, is what that just said. Recording took place between 2009 and 2010. It was released in 2011. So it is an older album, and they only have 2 albums? Holy cow, their other albums from 99. 12 years for a new album. Well, we're due for a new one, and I hope they're working on it, because I've loved everything I've heard from them so far. Anyways, yeah, I was saying all this about the production, and there actually is a phenomenal, I keep using that word, a fantastic quality out there, quality version on their official looking Bandcamp. So that's a shame. I dropped the ball on that one. I apologize to everybody. But despite any problems I did have with the production throughout and the quality of the track, I could still hear the bass in pretty much every section, which is huge. A lot of rock and metal, even when I get a high quality version of the track, I have such a hard time hearing the bass. And sometimes the bass is just not present at all, especially when we're dealing with older metals. So to have it present, even despite any negative aspects about the quality of this file, is just, yes, that is huge props to the engineering team. So, mastered, engineered, and edited and ramped by Jeff Forden at Badass Studios. Yes, 100%. I hope if they are making a new one, they go back to that dude, because, yeah, so good. Alright, so aside from the bass, though, what is going on here? A lot. See, here's the thing with UneXpect is they have a bassist, 2 guitarists, a violinist, a keyboardist, and both guitarists and do vocals alongside our lead vocalist. And what we get out of this is 4 instruments that can play lead, treble, a bass instrument that can, well, technically 2 bass instruments because the keyboard can go down into a lower register, that can play lead lines if they need to, and frequently do. The bass and the keyboard both do lead lines in their range. And 3 vocalists, all of which I believe do harshes and cleans. I know at least one of the guitars does both of them. The main vocalist does both of them, and the second guitarist I think I've only heard do harshes, but it's possible they also do cleans. There is just a lot of lead instruments in this band. Or possibilities for lead lines to be played by an instrument in this band. And so, from what I've heard from them, I just kind of expect a lot of lead lines, and we get that here as well. There's a lot of sections in here that are expectedly chaotic, given that assumption that the band creates music this way. And there's just a lot going on. And so there is moments that I kind of wish they would flatten out the sound sphere, not the sound sphere, the atmosphere a little bit, and say, or possibly widen it out. Either way, we either need more room for these instruments, or we need to have more foundational lines going on for the chaos that sits above it. But I don't know if I want that to be a universal concept for this track. I don't want that to be my big takeaway, because the chaotic sections still are phenomenal. There's some really cool sections in here that are overwhelming, but I think appropriately so, because of how the song kind of leads me through its sections. The guitars are frequently playing a lot of notes all at the same time, although we do get moments where one guitar is shredding and one guitar is chords or playing a lighter ornamental idea. Usually in those moments, the violin is taking over as that second lead element. Our lead vocalist usually has some sort of melodic line, but I do recognize that occasionally when they feel the instruments are filling up too wide, they'll shift over to a harsh vocal in order to remove that melodic element and focus purely on the texture and rhythmic, which tends not to be so busy. The drums are wild in everything they do, but they are alone. The bass can supply a rhythmic component, but it's frequently utilized as a melodic or harmonic one. So the drums are kind of alone in the rhythm section. So having the vocalist shift over to harsh vocals tends to work well for the more chaotic moments, and I think they recognize that. It's pretty consistent that when the harsh vocals come in, it's either A, for a specific effect, or B, because there's a lot of melody lines going on. And so through all these melody lines, we actually get a lot of really cool techniques going on in here. We have counterpoint. I said that I believe we have a canon somewhere in there. And a canon is when two people play the same thing, but it's delayed. If you have ever heard, row, row, row your boat, or Frere Jacques, or what is another like popular kids one? But like row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. And when you would normally start merrily, 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 somebody else begins row, row, row your boat. So you have two people singing the same thing. They're just at different places. One person's already on the third bar, the other person's back on the first bar, and they're going to move together. They're going to move along together. And if you want, once this person hits merrily, 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 the next person can start. Now you have three people all distanced by 2 bars each. We had that in here, I'm fairly certain, between the violin and the guitar. They were both playing the same thing, but they were off by just a couple of bars or something. And metal and cannons. There's usually not enough instruments to do a canon in most metal bands. You're usually looking at just 4 instruments, sometimes 3 if you just got your guitar, bass, and drums, which a lot of bands utilize. And so if you're losing out on some of that power that you need. But with something like this, where you have so many voices, you can certainly play around with counterpoint, with odd melodies, with 3-way counterpoint, with cannons, with hockets, which we didn't hear any hockets in here, but it would not surprise me if we ended up hearing hockets in some UneXpect track, just because, actually, no. Desert's Urbania definitely has hockets between the vocalists. Yep. So yeah, this group is really really well versed in utilizing all of their lead instruments in a variety of different ways. Now, I think this has been a pretty scatterbrained analysis so far, just saying, oh, this was cool, and this was cool, and that was cool. Did you check that out? And I don't think that's going to change. Next up, we're going to look at their use of dissonance in the midsection there, which they toyed around with dissonance through a lot of this track. There's only so many ways that you can have 3 and 4 voices simultaneously playing things, where you're either one, going to have some overlap in notes, or B, I don't remember if it said A or B. We're going to go with B, or A or 1. Or B, you're going to have to choose some notes outside of the key in order to still fit in with what you're doing, but be unique. And occasionally when they do this, especially in their faster sections, we bring in some dissonance. Now, granted, they are being played faster, which means the notes get pulled off and moved to the next one quicker. And so we get the spice, the flavor of the note, without the dissonance it brings. But they particularly landed in this idea in the latter half of the track, where we had the 2 guitars, I think it was, might have been guitar and violin, purposefully playing dissonant dyads. They got that double D going on, and just, it worked though, right? I'm not a big fan of dissonance, But the thing was, and I pointed this out, is that this dissonance rose and rose. We had these two instruments clashing with their harmonies. And then we had the bass coming up underneath, and then we had another instrument coming over here, and we had a volume swell, and it all kind of opened up for this beautiful vocal harmony melody going on between one of the male vocals and our lead vocalist. And it was like the dissonance was needed to contrast so that it was almost like teetering on the edge of some sort of darkness, something really tense, and then finding that relief past it. It was just a gorgeous moment that felt like rain clouds and the clouds parting and the sun coming through and feeling that relief from like hours of rain or something like that, which I don't know, I like rain, so maybe that doesn't work so well for some people. But I think the concept is understandable there. And I think what they do really well is creating these little micro stories like that, where each section kind of tells me something a little different. Now, the problem is when you have something so disjointed like this, with so many different sections and ideas and concepts, how do you make it feel connected? And I think on the surface level, it's all connected by just the sheer chaos of it, like with a lot of bands that kind of revel in the insanity of their compositions, whether it's just a lot of a lot, like something like Between the Buried and Me, or just utilizing several instruments at any given time, like with UneXpect. It's that if as long as you keep it consistent, it's going to feel connected. Every section in here is overwhelming in one way or another, whether it's an overwhelming beauty or an overwhelming tension. And you never quite know what's around the corner, so everything sort of just blends into this mishmash of tons of ideas all over the place. And as long as they are sonically similar, which they don't tend to change their guitar tones or any of the timbres too wildly, it all tends to fit, generally speaking. But I don't ever get a moment of like, oh, this is obviously telling this type of story. I don't get that. I have a series of flashes of different visuals and emotions and feelings, but none of them seem to be connected in any way that tell a story. And I'm sure that is completely due to the fact that this is my first time listening to it. And the connectiveness is going to be something I pick up on through subsequent listens, where the novelty and unexpected elements of it get ground away a little bit as I begin to understand exactly what they're doing and be able to predict what's coming up next. Less like being in a tornado and more like observing it from miles away. But from a first time listen, it's just a smorgasbord of concepts, and none of it really ties together into anything that's cohesive more than just being a song that fits together, where moment to moment it's connected. It's just from the bird's eye view, it just seems like a mess. And that's one of the things I love about UneXpect. Is that on a first time, I'm like, wow, that was really cool, but I have no idea what it's about. But I can already see this unraveling. I can see that there is something underneath it all, and I haven't dug deep enough to get to it. And that sort of confusion mixed with a perception of something unified deeper is present in the lyrics as well. I have no idea what any of this is. At best, I can point to some really neat lines that either have cool rhymes or cool imagery to them, but as far as garnering some sort of insight into what they might be about, I'm nothing. It starts off wildly. On the right, capitalized right, by the way, words bleed in delicious erratic motions, to waltz and lunge deeply into the frail paper dungeons, with grace spill their stealthy meaning in a radical pattern of altered spinning. Words bleeding. a lunatic exorcism of impulsive literary stings, serving the untainted delight of devious cunnings. Words, bleeding. What does any of this mean? It's wildly descriptive in ways that don't make sense. Adjectives that should not be able to describe nouns, or adverbs that feel like they don't work with the verbs either. And none of it makes sense within the words. It's all deeply entrenched in metaphor and allegory. And I don't understand. I don't have the key to unlock any of this. But the more I read, the more seemingly unhinged, but probably just deeper in metaphor they get, I begin to find some really neat ideas. One series of lines in particular, I love the way that the wordsmithing of it goes, and the rhyme scheme of it says, "Disgust the fact that a fact is a fact, hack the holy artifact so exact in its contract." That is so good. I don't know what it means, but it is phenomenal. And by the end of it, it almost feels like we are devolving into just word salad. Disincarnate. It is easier to discuss the optical lunar tree. Bad men. Bad, meaningless, mean men. You should not be bothered when the soul is adrift. Seconds are precious. Feel them deeply. With grace, spill their stealthy meaning in a radical pattern of altered spinning words. And I just realized it's called Words. The track is called Words. It ends on the idea of altered spinning words. What do words even mean at the very beginning? It says words bleed into delicious erratic motions, almost as if to say that words are losing their meaning. And is that the purpose of this? Is to say that words can be twisted and contorted so that they already are sort of being corrupted, and we can do the same in our lyrics. Is there something deeper in here? I still believe there is, but I don't think it is circumstance, purely coincidence, that the track is called Words and that the meanings of the words are so hidden. And by the end of it, we talk about altered spinning words. I don't know. Those are my thoughts on UneXpect's Words. What did you think of this track? Anything that stood out to you? Anything that I touched on, but maybe not deeply enough? Anything that maybe I missed completely that you really enjoyed and would like to talk about? Or maybe something I just completely got wrong and you have a different perspective on, or just a correction to what I stated? Let me know that stuff down in the comments. Above the comment section is a description box. In there is a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, a way to support the channel, multiple ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three. Alright, we have a special selection coming up next. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow. 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical of the music you listen to. And have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.